Hello everybody, and welcome to the History of the Blood War series here on the Near Zone channel. As ever, I am your presenter, J Onwuka. This episode will give you an overview of possibly the newest archdevil of the Nine, Zariel the Fallen, Lord of the First. In the just century and a half preceding the current Dale Reckoning year of 1495, Zariel has carved her name deeply into the multiverse with her unmatched ferocity and lust for battle. Her focus is, and always has been, on winning the Blood War. It's well known, or at least loudly rumored, that Zariel is a fallen angel. She is said to have been a Solar, one of the greater angel forms. In this guise, she would have been one of her lord's most trusted and powerful attendants. In fact, she was near enough to a deity in power herself. Angels are dedicated to the protection and fostering of life. Somehow, this nobility was corrupted into a hot, angry malice, barely held in place by the laws which are her most precious guiding lights. To begin, we'll track how this happened. Part 1. History. Unraveling Zariel's early history is difficult for several reasons. An obvious one is the relatively recent gaining of her position in the Hells. There is a point of confusion to clear up, however. Newer sources, such as Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, refer to a Zariel who was an angel, invaded Hell with an army of mortals, was beaten, captured, and made into an archdevil. However, earlier texts, such as the Guide to Hell, say that Zariel was the ruler of Avernus at the time of the Reckoning of Hell, being deposed and replaced by Bel of the Forecross at its conclusion. It seems that these two stories conflict, and I think that it's important to resolve this so that we can understand how Zariel fits in the wider system of devil kind. I can think of two ways to resolve this issue. I'll start with the one that I think is less persuasive, though it certainly is still possible. Option 1 says that Zariel was indeed imprisoned after the Reckoning, but after a great many centuries she was freed somehow. She then created the deceit which we know as the Ride of Zariel as a way to return to power. If this idea is true, it would probably follow that the Ride itself was a failure. In a previous episode, I did bring up the idea that the Ride was actually a plot to get in the favor of Asmodeus. But that doesn't work here because he would already know Zariel and would not suddenly be impressed by a defeated archdevil returning with a mortal rabble only to be instantly crushed. The second option is simple. There are two Zariels, one who was imprisoned after the Reckoning and the other that arrived with her doomed ride into the Hells. Why were they given the same name? That's tricky, and of course there's no explicit answer in the sources. It's possible that they simply had the same name by chance, but that seems unlikely. Zariel could be a title given by Asmodeus to a fallen angel in his vassalage, though this is contradicted by several who pray for Zariel's aid when she was an angel, still using that name. It could also be a name given by her creator to a new angel who was filling the spot, so to speak, of the previously fallen angel, only for the replacement to fall as well. While the two Zariels theory isn't totally clean, I feel that it has fewer hangups in general than the old Zariel theory. I'm going to continue this episode assuming option 2, but I do hope to return to the Reckoning Zariel sometime in the future. The angel we now know as Zariel was created by the Faerunian deity Lathander, the Morning Lord, and therefore likely began her existence in his realm of morning glory. As Lathander is also the sun god Amunator, it's possible that she was instead created in the realm called Eternal Sun. It's also possible that she was created on Mount Celestia, which is where she would be posted later in her life. Regardless, assuming that she was in fact a Solar at one time, Zariel would have been one of Lathander's top lieutenants. Many view Lathander primarily as a deity of creativity, kind, generous, and charismatic, as well as interested in fostering communities. With that said, it shouldn't be forgotten that Lathander caused the Dawn Cataclysm, an extremely murky catastrophe said to be the result of his failed attempt to reshape the pantheon of Faerun. Aside from the undoubtedly many thousands of mortal deaths, the deities who perished included Mordain, Tyche, and possibly Mistral, the original Faerunian goddess of magic. While there are sources for the first two, Mistral being a victim is just a guess of mine. The main point that you should take from this is about Lathander though. He is an ambitious god. We have to assume that Lathander had some larger goal in mind when he assigned Zariel to monitor the Blood War from Mount Celestia. Maybe if Zariel had only trusted the Morning Lord more, she would have found that Lathander was working on his own plans to end the Blood War. This was not to be. Instead, the long duration of her vigil, just how long is unclear, but it's likely many centuries at least, this vigil seems to have slowly turned her towards war. She came to believe that the only way to stop this endless carnage was to completely destroy Devilkind and Demonkind alike. Zariel repeatedly demanded that Celestials and deities should form a great army of the heavens to descend upon the lower planes. As a Solar, her beliefs would have been considered carefully, and she should have had a strong voice. Even so, her demands were always refused. If any stood with Zariel, their presence was not recorded. While Zariel was confident that the Celestials could sweep away both devils and demons, we should recall that the Celestials had actually tried this before. This was called the Intervention of the Celestials back when the war was young, and they had been defeated in just over 1 year. If Zariel was aware of this fact, this also is not recorded, but it does suggest that she is younger than any beings who had lived through the intervention. We can guess why her demands may not have been taken seriously. The final wedge between Zariel and the other Celestials occurred when the demon lord of Knolls, Yinoghu, destroyed a town near the city of Elturel. Legend says that this was Idilglen, but I disagree, though I have discussed my problems with that idea. Regardless, the destroyed town had been under Zariel's protection, which compelled her to act. If she could have convinced other Celestials to join her, I believe she would have, but when she amassed her army of Hellriders, we only hear about mortals taking part. What followed was the Ride of Zariel. Its result was that Zariel was beaten and then brought before Asmodeus. The Great Lord of the Ninth had Zariel restored to health and made her comfortable. Next, he made her a startling offer. He would appoint her to be ruler of Avernus. Asmodeus' reasoning has always been a puzzle. This is in keeping with past decisions, though. Recall that he rewarded Geryon's help in thwarting the revolt of the other lords by stripping away Geryon's own lordship, while most rebel lords received a relatively light punishment. That defensive impulse on the part of Asmodeus must have been at least half of why he deposed Bel in favor of Zariel. Bel of the Fourcross is one of the most widely known devils, and his network of contacts is almost peerless. Very possibly, Asmodeus did not want him to continue in a post of such power, so Asmodeus reduced him. Zariel did present two qualities which recommended her in particular: her love of battle and her lack of fear. She was not a great strategist, but she was a great warrior. Going a step further, even though Zariel desperately wants to push the center of the Blood War back out of the Nine Hells, it's likely that Asmodeus made this switch precisely because he doesn't want any motion on the war at all. Delivering a great defeat to Demonkind requires strategic and logistical prowess of the kind that Bel and several others have proven, but which Zariel has not. Her one noted action thus far, the Ride, was an abject failure. With her in charge of Avernus, Asmodeus may be expecting a ferociously fought yet static status quo. Once Zariel assumed her position, she removed Bel from all battlefield duties and placed him in charge of making weapons and armor. Bel almost certainly would have kept the loyalty of the Dark Eight and, with their help, could have posed a significant challenge to Zariel's reign. Doing this helped Zariel to establish herself as the paramount commander of the Blood War forces, a position Bel had held and which wouldn't necessarily have fallen to her. This move is revealing of Zariel's lack of strategic awareness, however. By putting Bel in charge of the forges, she's made many military operations reliant upon good relations with Bel. Producing weaponry also lets him extend his network of contacts outside the lower planes and into the soul trade. Even though Zariel wants to avoid it, it may not be long before Bel has gained enough power to unseat her and reclaim his place. Though she's been placed by Asmodeus himself, might makes right in the Nine Hells, a law that even Asmodeus doesn't reject for long. Of course, it is possible that this is a trap of Zariel's invention, but it seems too subtle for her. This could also be a plot from Asmodeus, but Asmodeus has not interfered with Zariel's reign or her relation with Bel thus far, so it seems unlikely. An error in judgment is a very believable flaw for her, so I think the best explanation is that she simply didn't think that a craftsperson could have as much authority as a warrior. We'll discuss how she fits in with the other archdevils later in the episode. In the recent past, Zariel personally battled the demon lord Kostichi. She defeated him, imprisoned him, and took his hammer Madalotok for her own. Sometime after this, she had the city of Elturel dragged from Faerun down to Avernus. She claimed that the city had not properly supported her infamous ride, and so had betrayed her. Beyond this, reports differ, but these particular elements are known with a relative level of certainty. Part 2. Her character. Zariel possesses a terrifying beauty in her current fallen state. As a Solar, she would have been of impeccable humanoid form, with skin the color of gold or silver or copper. Now her perfection has been twisted, her radiance now replaced by corruption. Her skin is now a bloodless pale, and if she once had hair, it's lost now. Her scalp is barren smooth, with only the points of her elf-like ears poking up higher. She usually appears as a large humanoid woman, though not yet a giant. Her eyes are red, floating in sooty black lakes, with lines of black like claw wounds running one down each cheek. Her wings are dark-colored, either red or a void-like black, and her wingspan is about half again as long as her armspan. She is typically clad in black upper body armor, a breastplate that goes up to her chin and down to her waist, as well as armor for her arms from shoulder to wrist, with a lighter full-body garment underneath, often a dress or a tunic with a long ragged skirt which covers her legs. At most times, she is surrounded and crowned by a halo of fire, preventing any from surviving if they stand too near. Zariel's driving passion is battle. She sees it as the ultimate site of decision. Only through battle can the blood war ultimately be won. Her predilection for battle is not from cold reason, though. She enjoys battle thoroughly for its own sake. Perhaps a better way to put it is to say that battle is the only thing which satisfies her. And it is battle, not war, which she prefers. As a tactician and field commander, she is of the first class. As an overall war manager, she is crude and easily overwhelmed. Her path is always a direct attack. She is aware of this tendency, but does not see it as a flaw, instead criticizing more cunning strategists for avoiding the final clash out of fear. Thus far, she has only indulged one option aside from immediate attack. That option is building up her forces so that she can make a more devastating attack later. Zariel has several noteworthy talents aside from her sheer fighting prowess. She is a heavy user of fire magic, not only having her fire halo and ability to cast fireballs, but also being able to immolate targets with a stare. Her horrid touch is deathly, making those who are touched waste away rapidly. She can teleport, and she can also change her shape as she wills, should a basic scheme come to her mind. One of her most famous possessions is now lost to her, her celestial sword, which she was separated from during her disastrous ride. Its current location is not known, but most, including Zariel, believe it must still be in the Nine Hells. Her current weapon is Madalotok, a powerful hammer which she seized from its previous owner Kostichi. This weapon gives her immunity to freezing, while delivering blows that both burn the target and suck all heat out of anything nearby. Zariel's dominion over Avernus is maintained by the many flying fortresses she controls. These massive structures look like blades formed out of a rock appearing to be basalt. They fly vertically, making an odd and ominous sight cutting through the sky. One known example was found to be 150 feet tall, or 45 3/4 meters, while Zariel's personal fortress is 450 feet tall, or 137 meters. Zariel's fortress, and possibly others, has a mechanism to siphon souls out of the river Styx. These souls are the fuel for the fortress. Weaponry of these fortresses is not mentioned, but we should assume that they would be crewed with flying devils like Oceloths and casters like Cornugons and Blue Abishai, making them incredibly effective at projecting Zariel's power. Summing up Zariel's personality is difficult as little is known about the details of her interactions. Most view her as an almost demonic force, possessed by rage and little more. I believe she's understood through two main ideas. First, the blood war must be ended at all costs, and, following from that, order must ultimately defeat chaos. Part 3. The Present Day. Prosecuting the blood war is, of course, Zariel's chief priority, but there are other issues concerning her as well. At present, the goal she pursues over the others is cementing her control over Avernus. It is obvious that Avernus could be turned into a vast engine of war capable of conquering all the planes. To achieve this, Zariel must be the most powerful fiend on this hell, unchallenged and omnipotent. It's not clear what expectations Zariel has through this. Does she want to generate an endless and invincible army, or is there some other power she's after? What is clear is that Zariel has this in her sights as the first step to the final defeat of demonkind. To that end, there are several situations she must resolve before her power is secure. Probably the most pressing of these is her war of intrigue with Bel of the Four-Cross. The prize in this contest is significant, the loyalty of the Dark Eight and undisputed control of all blood war forces. It's true that Asmodeus is the direct lord of the Eight, and it is likely that he ordered them to respect Zariel as their superior. However, Bel had been a staunch ally of the Eight for countless generations, and they did not forget dependable allies. Also, they had worked closely with Bel while meeting with Asmodeus relatively rarely. If the Eight believe that Bel will soon return to power, they may refuse to take direction from Zariel. While she could complain to Asmodeus, it would be a show of weakness which she wouldn't long survive. Zariel would know that it is crucial to either bring Bel under her power or to eliminate him. The issue is that Bel is one of the most formidable intriguers in the lower planes. No one would find this to be an easy task, and Zariel is at a disadvantage in this arena. The other major power on Avernus is Tiamat, the five-headed dragon matriarch. Tiamat is confined to Avernus by unknown means, so she cannot be directly involved in the blood war, but her influence carries a great weight. This is primarily because she is mother and master of the fiends called Abishai. These Abishai are important auxiliaries in the Devil Legions, but they will always respond first to Tiamat's needs. This means that it is important that Devil Commanders and Archdevils maintain an acceptable relationship with her. Tiamat's position is interesting because, despite this great influence, she seems to have no ambition to rule the whole layer. Nevertheless, Zariel dislikes Tiamat's presence, and it's easy to imagine how she might consider the Dragon Queen a threat. Two somewhat smaller threats pose present obstacles to Zariel's dominion as well. First is the press of demons. Demonic mobs frequently travel the Styx to attack Avernus, but they rarely seem to gain much ground. According to recent sources, 2 demon lords have been spotted at the head of armies on this layer: Baphomet, Prince of Beasts, and Yinohu, Lord of Butchery. There is no record of how they arrived, if they have goals, how far they have marched, or anything else. There are also a plethora of petty warlords who rule despite any greater power through the heavy use of infernal war machines. Avernus is vast, and destroying every threat may be impossible, but as long as there are major threats, Zariel's position is not secure. Zariel hates politics and subterfuge. She engages when she must, such as against Bel, but views it as perverting the order which devils are to uphold. Like many fallen angels, she hasn't totally given up on concepts like honor and fairness, even if they remain only as a perversion of those pure ideals. Because she hates politics, she has remained aloof from alliances with other archdevils. This means that other nobles have no ally on Avernus other than Bel, only adding to his base of supporters. None have yet dared to move against her for an obvious reason. She was made Lord of Avernus by the hand of Asmodeus directly. To be clear, Zariel doesn't view Asmodeus as a friend or mentor, and Asmodeus has not interfered in her affairs since elevating her. Even so, her connection to Asmodeus is a protection. Outside of Asmodeus, there is no one who even has confidence in her. The closest thing that Zariel has to an ally or friend are her underlings. Chief of these are the diabolic fallen paladins, Haruman and Olanthius, warriors who had accompanied her on the ride and remained loyal even after death. Because she doubts the allegiance and dependability of the Dark Eight, she has created an overstrength personal guard, which she hopes to make more powerful than the Eight's legions. She will certainly have several pit fiend underlings to help command her forces. She also has several cults in her name on the material plane, giving her access to choice souls and other resources. All those who claim Zariel as their patron have one thing in common. They agreed to make themselves subject to her wrath. Part 4. Interaction. In this section, I'm going to lay out 4 different kinds of interaction and how to approach Zariel by each. I'll go from outside in a sense. The first kind of interaction is social interaction. Of the 4, Zariel pays the least attention here. Now, by social interaction, I mean everything from rumors and politics to in-person conversations, as long as it's not involving combat. Zariel's lack of care about her social position is an armor and a curse. Her personality is such that only fanatic devotees surround her. Finding someone close to her to turn is extremely difficult, if not impossible. Speaking to her directly can quickly go wrong, as she is likely to react with rage if she detects either cunning or eloquence. Outside her minions, few have any liking for Zariel. Many would be eager to share their observations if it would lead to her overthrow. The surest way to get in the favor of Zariel is to deliver one of her rivals as a captive. Failing that, she is open to hearing novel but well-considered plans to neutralize her main threats. On the other hand, one who could deliver Zariel to Bel or one of the other archdevils would be sure to receive a great reward. Strategic interaction is engaging with Zariel militarily, but at the army scale. Here is where Zariel is at her most vulnerable, but in a way which frequently doesn't matter. As an unflinchingly direct commander, Zariel's straight-line marches will be easy for a decent opponent to trap. From battle to battle, Zariel's force is likely to win, but her campaigns usually collapse before reaching their goal. It is tempting to think that this strategy would be good against similarly single-minded demons, but it has the same problem for a different reason. A demon horde is like a blob or an ooze, so driving straight in ends up with one surrounded and consumed. Zariel must be well aware of her strategic shortcomings. Her solution would most likely be to focus on quick, hard strikes rather than long campaigns. She should withdraw as soon as her legions face a significant holdup. Whether she would is another matter. While Zariel is capable of acting pragmatically, she prefers to fight until her strength is exhausted. The surest way to defeat her attacking force is through a defense in depth, splitting a large army into small parts and using it to delay her legions over smaller battles, steadily bleeding the legions and wearing them out. If attacking her, Zariel will be likely to overcommit if presented with a sizable threat, possibly leaving her open for a swing around the sides or a jugular strike. A mage of great experience would likely find Zariel's arcane power to be incredible, while her finesse is far less so. Interacting magically could be an effective approach, but it is also risky. Trying direct magical attacks is ill-advised, as she is resistant to damage from fire and radiant energy, as well as being fully immune from the direct effects of cold, poisons, and necrotic energy. She also appears to be unaffected by magical charms and never becomes exhausted or frightened. While this does still leave options, such as lightning magic, for direct attacks, her high magic resistance in general make this a last-ditch effort at best. It will probably be more effective to use magic tactically, aiding one's allies and altering the battle space to one's advantage. Zariel doesn't appear to possess any counter magic, meaning she will have no immediate counter. Preparing to nullify her fire magic and devising a way to capture her should be priorities for any magic user confronting her. Of course, Zariel is very aware of this flaw and tends to compensate by having more magically skilled attendants such as Pelerions, Emnitsu, and Blue Abishai. It's probable that she would have some dispelling or anti-magic capability to hand. As far as planar magic goes, don't try it. Zariel will be difficult to magically summon even by Asmodeus. Combat interaction is the riskiest option because Zariel is such an awe-inspiring warrior. Resistance to fire is the only way one even has a chance against her. Flight and teleport will also be important, as Zariel is expert at using those abilities to gain and keep the upper hand. As said, however, hoping to beat Zariel in personal combat is a fool's errand. If you really want to defeat her, focus on the other kinds of interaction. Conclusion. Anyone who is making plans about the Blood War in this day and age needs to reckon with Zariel. While she is not cunning, she is exceptionally dangerous as an enemy. She's proven herself both in battle and in single combat, and that is the best way to approach her. She is not a court ruler, she is a commander. That's why she uses her flying fortresses. If there is any trouble, she must be able to bring force to that trouble in as short a time as possible. The best way to deal with her is likely through subterfuge, and, if you can manage it, an alliance with Bel. Just be warned, there may be a point where Asmodeus does feel compelled to step in. If that happens, the chances of your success drop down to 0. Fallen angels do value loyalty after all. And here we are at the end of another episode. I have more coming up in this Ride of Zariel series. Hopefully it won't be too long, but, well, you've seen my upload schedule recently. I may start dipping into some other different types of content as well, but I will continue to release the Blood War series as often as I can get them done. I'd like to give a special shout out to my patrons Greg D and Valdus Shadow 12. And if you've continued listening this far, I've got only one thing to say to you. Thanks.